Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the second book of Kings. We are in chapter 8, verse 7. That's Parak Ches, Pasuk Zayin. We just read the little story about the woman whose son Elisha had revived, how she was instructed by Elisha to leave her home because of the famine that was coming. When she came back, she found that squatters had taken over her property. She went to the king to complain, and when she came to the king, she found Gehazi there telling stories about Elisha, trying to get advantage by telling the story about what happened with Elisha and her own son. The king then decided in her favor and gave her back her fields. That was the story that we just read. It's unclear why this following story comes right afterwards, what the juxtaposition teaches us. It's just a little bit of a challenge. The Chazael, the rabbis have a tradition that Gehazi, and we're kind of tracking Gehazi, but that he had run to Aram, and Elisha came to try to get Gehazi to repent. So there's a whole subtext going on in Chazael and the Talmud about Gehazi and getting him back to repent and so on. But we're going to stick to this simple meaning of the verses for now and wonder, just why is Elisha going to Damascus? One theory is maybe this occurred during that famine and Elisha went to Damascus following his own advice because of the famine. Another possibility is, which we're about to read, that Ben-Hadad was ill, and he knew that Ben-Hadad would call upon him if he was present because of his illness, and therefore, Elisha might be able to use that as a way to accomplish what we're about to read. He's going to accomplish when he's there, so I don't want to give it away. So anyway, or maybe he traveled and he just happened to be there. Who knows? Regardless, he went to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad melech Aram, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, Chola, was ill. Now this guy had caused a lot of trouble for Elisha, including trying to capture him and kill him at one point. But now he's on his deathbed. And remember, this guy had a servant, or his main right-hand man was Naaman, who had a tremendous miracle occurred to him at the hands of Elisha when he was cured from his leprosy. So Ben-Hadad clearly heard that Elisha was there, so because Vayugadlo Lemar, and it was told to him, saying, Ba'isha lemarena. The man of God, the one that everybody knows, Elisha, the famous guy, who word's getting out about Elisha, he's here. So Vayomer Hamelech el Chazael. So the king said to Chazael, Kach biyadcha mincha. Take a offering. Take some kind of a big gift. V'lech likras ishalim, and go greet the man of God. V'dorashto es Adonai me'oso lemar, and find out from him. Search out and try to seek God through him, through the prophet, asking him as follows: Ha'echya mecholi zeh. Shall I survive from this illness? Presumably, this is just a way of saying, pray, have the prophet pray for me so that I should get healed. Now, this, of course, reminds us back in the beginning of this book when Achaziah, the king of Israel, sent messengers to the priests of the Philistine god, right? Which was considered a terrible thing that he did, and embarrassing and a shame to God that he would go and seek help from an idol of a different nation rather than speak to God himself. But here, this is the opposite. We have the king of another nation searching out God for help in his illness. Now, another reason, of course, why Elisha is here, whether this was his intention, could have been, but Elisha knows that God had told his teacher, Elijah, that in the future, right, that he is going to appoint, he's going to be the one who appoints Chazael as the king of Aram. Now, Eliyahu was taken up to heaven before he accomplished that. So Elisha apparently knew that it was going to be his job to accomplish this in place of his teacher, right? So here we have Chazael now, who is the assistant of the king, Ben-Hadad, coming to Elisha on behalf of the king, Ben-Hadad, with a tremendous gift. Now, this gift, if you remember, Elisha was very careful before when he interacted with Naaman not to take any gifts for what he does. And Elisha, in general, we get the impression that he is against the concept of taking gifts. And remember, then he got really angry at Gehazi for taking money when he shouldn't have, right? Because Elisha doesn't want it to look like he's not about making money off of performing miracles for people. He's about bringing people closer to God. However, because Gehazi messed it up, Ben-Hadad still thinks, and by taking payment, right, against Elisha's wishes, so the reputation that Elisha wanted, right, didn't happen. And Ben-Hadad therefore thinks that Elisha is like all the other priests that he knows, for all the other idols he knows, that they'll, do their incantations and blessings and do a little dance, and for enough money they'll do whatever you want, and who knows, maybe it'll work and he'll get healed. So Vayelech Chazael likraso, this is verse 9. Chazael went to greet Elisha, Vayikach mincha biyado, and he took an offering, a gift in his hand, V'chol tuv Damasek, and all of the great products that Damascus had to produce, and all the things that Damascus was famous for. Masar boim gomel, enough stuff to load up 40 camels. That's a pretty big gift. Vayavo vayamud lefanav, and he came and he stood before Elisha, Vayomer, and he said, Bincha, your child. And remember, we've seen several times that the prophet was called Avi, my father. So when when you refer to yourself in front of the prophet, it would make sense to call yourself your son, right? But here, because it's Chazael speaking on behalf of Ben-Hadad, he says, your son Ben-Hadad, Melech Aram, the king of Aram, Shalachani Elecha, sent me to you, Lemar, with the following question: Ha'echle mechali zeh, will I survive this illness? Vayomer elav Elisha. Elisha answered him, Emar lo, tell him, Chayo tichyeh, you shall live. V'hir ani Adonai, but God told me, Kimos yamos, that you will die. This is a very tricky answer. What exactly is Elisha saying? So there's various ways to try to understand this. But the simplest level, and the one that most of the commentaries follow, is Elisha is telling Chazael this because he wants to hint to Chazael exactly what to do. He's not going to tell Chazael directly, but he's going to hint to Chazael so that he gets the message. So he says to Chazael, tell him that he will get better from the illness, right? Right. In other words, the question is, will you get better from the illness? Yes, you will get chayo tichyeh. You will become healed. You will recover from the illness. However, I'm telling you, Chazael, right, that he's marked as a dead man. Vayamod et panav, and at that point, Vayamed et panav, and at that point, Elisha kind of stopped talking and kind of stared off, right? Vayamed et panav, he stared off with like a blank face. Vayosem ad bosh, and he sat there for a long time, right? Just with this a face that was blank, a blank stare, like he was thinking, and an image was in his mind of what's to come. Vayevki shalohim, and the man of God started to cry. So at this point, he's silent. He's just standing there crying. So try to think So this impression, you have the prophet of God tells Chazael he's going to survive, but he's going to survive the illness, but he is a dead man. He is going to die. And then he just sat there and thought until he burst out in tears. Vayomer Chazael, and Chazael said, Madua Adoni boche, why is my master crying? And Elisha had seen in his mind that Chazael is going to be the king, and he is going to be leading Aram, which remains the enemy of Israel. And Vayomer, and he says, Ki adati, because I know Esaser Tase Livnei Yisrael, that which you're going to do to the people of Israel, that you're going to do Ra'ah, you're going to do so much harm and so much evil. Mivtzerehem Tishalach Ba'ish, you're going to burn down their fortresses. Uvachurehem Bacherev Tarog, and their young men you're going to kill by the sword. V'olaleim Tiratesh, and you will smash their children. V'horosem Tivakea, and you will destroy their pregnancies. The pregnant women will lose their babies because of your wars and because of your violence and viciousness. So, because here you have Elisha is being told to basically to tell Chazael to assassinate the king, which is what we see is going to happen soon, and eventually make a coup and seize the kingdom himself. But as the leader of Aram, he's going to be the enemy of Israel. And to think that the prophet, although he knows, of course, how corrupt the people of Israel are, and he knows that because of their actions, they're going to bring destruction upon themselves. But here, standing in front of the man who's going to lead that destruction, Elisha felt this terrible, terrible anguish over the fate of his people. They're still his people. And he's still their prophet. He's still their leader, even if they might be evil and even if they might be doomed to terrible suffering. Vayelech me'et Elisha. Chazael left Elisha, vayavo el Adonav, and he came to his master. Vayomer lo, and he said, Ma amar lecha Elisha. What did Elisha tell you? Vayomer, and he said, Amar li chayo tichye. He told me, Amar li chayo tichye. He told me that you are going to recover from this illness. Vayihi macharas, and it was the next morning. Vayikach hamachber, and he took a machber, which is generally understood to be some sort of a mat, and or a pillow or something that's in his bed, right? Vayitbol b'mayim, and he dunked it in water in order to make it heavy and solid, right? So that he would suffocate from the water, and he wouldn't be able to breathe. Vayifros al panav vayamos, and he stretched it over the face of the king, and while he was in his bed, and killed the king. Vayimlo Chazael tachtav, and thus Chazael seized the kingdom and became the next king of Aram. So this is Elisha brought about the kingdom of Chazael, and if I just want to point out a few things here, Elisha is also soon. We'll get there in a little bit later in a couple chapters. We're going to read about how Elisha also brings Yehu, who is the king who is going to destroy Jehoram. Jehoram is the king of Israel now, right? And Elisha knows that the prophet he knows prophetically that which God had said, that the house of Achav, which is the house of Omri. Omri was the father of Achav, right? Who is the father of Jehoram, who's the current king. That this house is destined for destruction. So he has just appointed Chazael to be, because he's going to be the king that's going to bring about terrible destruction, and then he's going to appoint Yehu, which we're going to find later. I'm giving it away, but later on, as the king who within Israel, who's going to wipe out the house of Achav completely and take over the kingdom. So Elisha is therefore the prophet who is really setting up the destruction of this house of Omri, because they were such a bunch of wicked kings, and no matter what Elisha had tried, they would never learn and never were able to turn around. And here is one of those major points in that history, is Elisha appointing Chazael. So the significance of this little portion of the chapter that we just read is Elisha appointing the one who is going to destroy this dynasty that had been so powerful politically, but refused to turn away from idol worship, refused to turn away from the ways of Yeravam ben Nevat, of Jeroboam, and refused to return to God, and caused so much suffering that we have read about until this point. So this concludes this portion of chapter 8. Thank you so much for studying 8b together. Looking forward to studying the rest of this chapter and the rest of this book of Kings. Have a wonderful day.